Performance Leadership International. I am dedicated to empowering entrepreneurs by sharing tools, tips, and resources that are the formula for your abundance and success on my show, Abundance Blueprint with Kimberly. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Abundance Blueprint with Kimberly. I'm Kimberly Lane Roberts, your host and content creator. And today we have a fabulous show. I'm real excited for you to meet the CEO of VeraScore because you're going to listen in our conversation about how to take control and improve your financial health with the VeraScore CEO, Geff Woodward. Before we dive into that, everybody always likes to ask, how can they work with me? So, if you're interested, please sign up for a 30-minute complimentary session with me by following the link below at Performance Leadership International. As when you work with me, I focus on one, I'll get you to your financial wealth, but I also, more importantly, will get you to your abundance of fulfillment, balance, and the ability to thrive in every aspect of your life. So without further ado, let's jump into the show by welcoming our guest. You're going to meet the disruptor of the credit score and lending industry. He brings over 30 years of experience and expertise as a financial executive, leading and advising both startups and also Fortune 500 companies, such as Chevron, Walmart, Autodesk, and Sephora. He is driven by his own personal struggles in finding and getting money for himself, and has turned this challenge for himself into something that's very fabulous for the consumer and for the lending industry, and really, like I mentioned, a disruptor. So listen in to find out more. So without further ado, let's bring up our guest, the CEO of VeraScore, Geff Woodward.
Hey, Kimberly.
Hey, Geff, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Good, good, good. As always, we always like to ask each guest, what does abundance mean to you? And you shared savoring the moment, live in the present, and value the experiences, especially with loved ones. When did you kind of get that aha? When did that kind of hit for you in your life?
I think just growing up and kind of watching the world around me, I was always kind of a different kid. I never looked at the world the way most people did. And for me, it's just throughout my life, whenever I've spent quality time with people, that was more important to me. Money to me is a means, not an ends. I value experiences, not stuff. I've had stuff. Stuff is nice. Don't get me wrong, but I really find it interesting when people strive for things and then they get it, then they want something different. I think as humans, we're just built to constantly strive, which is really interesting. I like to slow down and kind of savor those moments with people. I think that's more interesting.
Yeah. And I one thing I've mentioned this before, but I do believe that our challenges in our personal life have led us to be driven, and in some cases running from something, running from the pain, trying to prove something. And so I think there becomes a shift as we get older about, wait a second, I achieved everything, but I'm not happy. And so how do we turn that now into feeling abundant, feeling peaceful, no longer running, but running towards, joy and giving back, or whatever that means for you, right? So, and you're going to probably elaborate a little bit more on this. Your pivotal moment was with your father, and you did mention that you saw the world a little bit differently, and you realized that. So, tell us a little bit more about that aha moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was always kind of a different kid. I was always asking the different questions, and I just the way I saw the world, no one else kind of saw it the same way I did. And I had a very challenging relationship with my father, to say the least. He was very creative, talented guy, but had a lot of demons, alcoholic and a few other things. And it just, was never really happy. So as the oldest boy of 5 kids, I looked through that lens, and I took some of that on in my life, which was unfortunate. And then I finally got past it. But the best thing he did for me when I was 7, 8, and 9 is he realized I was like him, and I looked at the world differently. And he exposed me. He was a lit major. And I became one too in college. And he introduced me to Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Old Man in the Sea, and Catcher in the Rye at 7, 8, 9. And I finally realized, there are other people that look at the world differently like I do. And it answered a lot of my questions, and it kind of opened that world up for me, which was huge. It was a even though I had that challenging relationship with him, there were moments like that where he kind of saw me, and they were few and far between, but they were enough to get me there.
And very poignant and very memorable for you, right? And because of some of the other challenges that existed, but there were those one precious moments that were very instrumental. So another instrumental part of your story is the spark that inspired VeraScore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was in 2007, and the last place I ever thought I would be is the bankruptcy court in Alexandria, Virginia in the spring. I had worked my entire life and been raised by my parents with a strong work ethic. I had perfect credit, did all that stuff. And then I tried to start my first startup, and I self-funded it, which was a mistake. Don't ever do that.
That's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole nother problem. But what happened was, here I was working on the startup, and credit card companies were throwing, this was 2004, 5, 6, and credit card companies were literally throwing $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 credit cards at me with no income verification. I'm like, well, it's okay, because I'll get this thing up and running and I'll pay it back. And then I wasn't able to. It was a real low point to have to declare bankruptcy. But what I realized in that courtroom is I'm looking around, and I even asked my bankruptcy attorney, I said, why are all these people here? Because a lot of people were in wheelchairs or with oxygen kits. And they said, medical debt is the most reason. And I actually kind of presaged the financial crisis personally. And I just realized the credit system was broken and it didn't work. And if it wasn't working for me, a middle-class white guy, how is it going to work for everybody? So I started thinking about, how can we solve that problem? Credit scores really just measure a consumer's ability to have debt. They don't really measure your ability to service it. And both the lender and the consumer should care about those things. In fact, of the four or five factors in a credit score, only one looks at your financial performance, and that's whether or not you pay on time, and that's 35 to 40% of your score. So that's just, to me, it was just a rife area with problems.
Yeah. So kind of go over, just from someone trying to, say, get a mortgage. What is the problem with the challenges with the system now? And then we'll also talk a little bit what your solution provides for that.
Yeah. So what's happened over the 50, 60, 70 years is you've got these kind of paper processes that have turned to online processes with a credit score. Credit scores actually came out of the old checkbook registries, where if you wrote bad checks, they'd look up in the book. And if you had a bad check, they wouldn't let you check out at the store. So it's very old technology. So this lending process is the same whether you're getting a credit card or a home mortgage. We do the home mortgage refi here because of the length of time. So first, you start with the application. That'll take you a day or so as a consumer. There's a lot of components in that. They do a soft pull, et cetera. Then they start looking at your actual, so I can't see the thing. They do the eligibility criteria. That takes a couple of days. Then they start with the documents and the verification. That can take 10 to 20 days. If anyone has applied for a loan or a refi, they ask you for stuff, and then they ask you for more stuff, and they have to go verify it because it's consumer provided data. So there's a lot of just bad stuff, manual steps in there and processes that take it out of the stream. Then they'll do a credit review. Then they'll do an underwriting. Then they'll do a loan, the offer and the borrower, and then they'll actually disperse. And for a home loan or a refi, that can take anywhere from 30 to 50, 60 days, which is huge. And it's just a complex problem.
And it's stressful.
It's stressful, but it's just very pedantic. And then right now you've got roughly 50 million Americans that are either credit invisible or unscorable, which means they either never have had credit or they've recently had credit. A lot of Gen Zs, millennials, and immigrants coming out of college, same thing. Very hard for them to have a credit score. And you've got another 56 million Americans that are considered deep subprime. And again, we don't feel that they're being measured accurately. We think there are good borrowers in there, not all 56 million, but probably a decent amount of them. So that's 106 million people out of 255 million that don't have access, 42%. That's huge.
Well, I think that's important, because the way Gen Zs and Gen Y, they're purchasing things differently. They're doing things differently. Like you said, they're not using credit, they're not building credit, right? So the credit score isn't, things are shifting. So we have to shift the way we look at and how we measure somebody's ability to pay, right? And I really like your model in the essence that you have an app that people can actually see how their score is improving, and it actually gives them suggestions on how they can start improving it, right? And it's not just about whether they made a payment, right? There's actually very constructive things, and it's a revolving timeline. It's not just you're kind of stuck based on your payment schedule and what you've missed in the last 5 years, but
Well,
it's really about kind of so explain a little bit more how just
yeah,
simple nuances can improve somebody's financial score and health in that process.
exactly. The thing that we did that's very different, in fact, it took someone from outside the industry to really come up with this, because credit scores happen to you as a consumer. Your data is collected without your knowledge or approval, through the bureaus. You have to use it to get, to apply for a job, to most jobs, get an apartment. Some insurance companies require it to do insurance, and then definitely for any credit or loan. But it happens to you. It's a 30-day-old snapshot that's backward looking and static, right? And like I said, only one aspect of it looks at your ability to pay. So what we did is we totally flipped that model, and we created a holistic, predictive, objective score based on your cash flow, how you live your life. All of our factors are based on financial performance. We worked with certified financial planners to make sure we're measuring the right things. And so we come up with this holistic model, and we're just meeting people where they are. We're not saying you're good or bad. We're just saying this is where you are. And the only way to improve your VeraScore is by improving your financial health. And we will send you targeted financial recommendations specifically for your case, because you and your partner even are slightly differently financially in how you behave. And that's okay. We just want to improve that. So what we do is we pull down 2 years worth of data. So we have an actual a long-term view. You get to decide when the data gets used. You decide when it gets when you want to apply for credit. There's no hard pull. You can look at your score 100 times a day. You can give it to 100 lenders. Nothing happens to your score until you actually get a loan. So that's why it's just very different.
Yeah, very cool. No, I think it's a valid point, and I think the world's changing. So, and the way we buy it and purchase things, and the tools we use are changing, and so it all has to be represented, right? I know you have have an AI complement to this. Can you just explain what's the value add for that as far as for the system and the platform?
Yeah, everybody's excited about AI. I think AI, I've been working in AI companies since 97. Applied AI, which is what we use, is how people inference. Generational AI like ChatGPT is just a smarter search engine. And that's powerful, but we actually are using inferential reasoning in how we look at this. And the thing that we do that a lot of people don't do is we do next gen decisioning. So we actually help the lenders make decisions based on financial cash flow performance. So they're understanding your capacity to have debt and your ability to pay it off. And the one thing that we do, like I said, the only way to improve your score is to become more financially healthy. You cannot game the system. Easiest thing to do for a credit score, and I talked to this one kid, I say kid, he's 25. He's working at Google. He's making $150,000 a year. He took out $78,000 in credit cards just to be able, and he stuck them in a stock drawer just to bump his score above 800. So that's the crazy thing about a credit score is you can have an 825 credit score and be inches away from bankruptcy. You're just paying everything on time. You can have a 600 credit score and be financially healthy, but they're not measuring the right things. That's why it's so different. So, but the reason, if you go back to that slide, the reason that we use AI is we're using it both on the top line in how we approach that data. We'll have an AI agent that will help the lender. We'll have decisioning. We use AI in the decisioning process. We'll have an AI chat for the borrower to help them through that process, et cetera. And we flow that down. And then we also use AI in how we look at the some of the connections to the core systems, and some of the we pull the transactions, and then we also use that AI in the decisioning and providing targeted recommendations for how to improve their financial health.
No, I think it's fabulous. I think it's a solution that's people have been waiting for. So, just to kind of recap, obviously this is not just for America. This eventually could be worldwide, correct?
Right.
But just looking at what's the I always like to look at, you've taken your pain, turn it into a passion, and now you've got a bigger purpose in how it serves humanity. And so I just want you to elaborate a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean the interesting stat that we came across when we were building this is the U.S. economy is plus or minus $27 trillion, but fully 2/3 of that is based on consumer debt, $17 trillion. And that's great, but if there are cracks in that system, like there were back in the late 2000s during the home crisis, that's a problem. If VeraScore was around at that time and being widely used, we never would have had that crisis because they wouldn't have been able to lend to people in that way. You'd be able to tell people's financial health. So we call this a triple win. It's a win for the lenders who don't need that much help, but it helps them understand that capability and who they should lend to and how much they should lend. So it puts them in a solid footing. It's a lend for the consumers. The borrowers are able to get loans that they wouldn't normally qualify for, and they get loans that they can actually service. And again, we want to teach that financial literacy. And then overall, it's a win for the economy, because if our lenders and our consumers are strong, the economy is strong, especially an economy where 2/3 of it is built on consumer debt. That's a challenge.
Nope. Agreed. So, and then finally, our last question to close out the show. This is one of my favorite questions. Is just, given your journey, given your challenges, now looking at your potential success, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, it's funny. I think growing up, and I'm sure we all experience this, you're living in the moment and you think, oh my God, everything is so important. And I would tell my younger self, look, all these challenges you're facing, it's going to make you a stronger person in the end. It's hard to see it in the moment, of course, especially when we go through any stress or loss or challenge, but ultimately it's character, and your character, I joke that I've got a lot of character because I've been through a lot of stuff, and we all have. I'm not trying to say I'm any better or worse than anybody else, but to me, it's really how you approach it. I'm a big fan of lifelong learning and improvement. And I'm not perfect. Nobody is. I never pretend to be, but as long as I'm learning, I mean, even from some of my employees, they'll give me feedback and I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't explain that well, or I made an assumption here. I mean, it's always important to me to listen and to take it in and weigh it. And I just think it's important. I am my own worst critic, and I know a lot of people can resonate with that. And I think you've got to give yourself some grace.
No, I agree. Definitely give yourself some grace. I think I remember, and I'll never forget, it was in like elementary school. I just remember somebody saying that it can either make you bitter or it can make you better.
Exactly.
So making it better is much better. So
one letter off.
Yes. Any closing thoughts? I know you are open to funding and investing, and so I will have all that information, how to get a hold of you in your platform and things of that sort in the show notes. So please don't hesitate to reach out to Geff. He would welcome those conversations. Absolutely. And I'm going to just say thank you so much for being on the show, and bye for now.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in today's show, The Abundance Blueprint, and our wonderful guest, CEO of VeraScore, Geff Woodward. Until next time, until next Tuesday, you know where to find us, and feel free to listen in on our old episodes as well. PerformanceLeadershipInternational.com. Make sure to join me every week for a new episode on the Superstar Entrepreneurs YouTube channel.